Right now, as you're listening to this, someone somewhere is making a decision about you. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's someone you call a friend. And here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are they making that decision with you or about you? Because there's a difference, a massive one. Most people spend their entire lives being decided about. They're the pieces on the board, not the players. They react, they hope, they wonder why things never seem to go their way. And then there are the others, the ones who move pieces, the ones who see what others miss, the ones who are, for lack of a better word, dangerous. Not dangerous in the way that makes people afraid of you. Dangerous in the way that makes people think twice before crossing you. Dangerous in the way that commands respect without asking for it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone who ever lived. Now you've probably heard the name. You've probably heard the word Machiavellian thrown around like an insult. Cunning, manipulative, ruthless. But here's what they don't tell you. Machiavelli wasn't writing a manual for tyrants. He was writing a survival guide for anyone who refuses to be a victim of their own naivety. He lived in a world of betrayal, shifting alliances, and constant danger. And he watched good people get destroyed, not because they were bad people, but because they refused to see the world as it actually is. He wrote The Prince in 1532, but his insights are more relevant today than ever. Because the world hasn't changed that much. People still want power, people still lie, people still take advantage of kindness when it's mistaken for weakness. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 8 ruthless lessons. 8 principles that, if you truly internalize them, will make you dangerously smart in a world that rewards strategy, perception, and control. This isn't motivation. This isn't feel-good advice. This is a psychological rewiring. So if you're ready to stop being the piece on the board and start being the player, keep listening. Let's begin. Lesson 1. It is safer to be feared than loved. Machiavelli wrote something that has haunted leaders for 5 centuries. He said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Now, let me be clear about what he didn't mean. He didn't mean you should be a tyrant. He didn't mean you should inspire terror. He meant something far more subtle and far more important. He meant that love is fragile. Love depends on the goodwill of others. And goodwill, as you've probably learned the hard way, can vanish in an instant. People's affections shift with their circumstances. Today they love you. Tomorrow, when you can't give them what they want, that love turns to resentment. But fear is reliable. Fear doesn't depend on someone's mood. Fear doesn't require them to like you. Fear simply requires them to respect the consequences of crossing you. Think about your own life. Who do you truly respect? Not the people who are nice to you all the time, the people who have standards, the people who won't tolerate being disrespected, the people who, if you cross them, you know there will be consequences. That's what Machiavelli understood. Fear creates boundaries. Love creates expectations. Now here's the dangerous part, the part most people miss. Machiavelli isn't telling you to be cruel. He's telling you to be consistent, to follow through, to mean what you say. Because the moment people realize your threats are empty, your words are hollow, and your boundaries are negotiable, you've lost all power. You don't have to be unkind. You just have to be unmovable. So ask yourself, in your life, are you loved or are you respected? Because those two things are not the same. And if you had to choose, Machiavelli would tell you, choose respect every time. Let's move on. Lesson 2. Never do an enemy a small injury. This is one of Machiavelli's most brutal insights and one of the most misunderstood. He wrote, "If you must injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their revenge." In other words, either treat people well or destroy them completely. There is no middle ground. Why? Because human beings remember. We remember slights. We remember humiliations. We remember the person who made us feel small. And here's the problem with small injuries. They leave the other person alive and angry. You've hurt them just enough to motivate revenge, but not enough to prevent it. You've made an enemy who now has nothing to lose. Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia, a ruthless leader who understood this perfectly. Borgia didn't half-measure his cruelty. When he dealt with rivals, he dealt with them completely, not because he enjoyed it, but because he understood that unfinished business comes back to haunt you. Think about your own life. Have you ever had a falling out with someone, and you thought it was over, only for them to come back months or years later, still carrying that grudge? That's what happens when you leave things half done. Machiavelli's lesson is simple. If you're going to make a move, make it. Don't poke, don't provoke, don't leave loose ends. Either build bridges or burn them completely. Because the most dangerous person in the world is someone who has been slightly wronged and has had time to think about it. This leads us to our next lesson, which is about how you handle those who have wronged you. Lesson 3, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. This one you've probably heard before, but you probably haven't thought about why it works. Machiavelli knew that enemies are not just obstacles, they are sources of information. Your enemies watch you more carefully than your friends do. They study your weaknesses, they anticipate your moves, they know what you're afraid of. So here's the dangerous question. Why wouldn't you want to know what they know? Keeping your enemies close isn't about being nice to them. It's about surveillance. It's about understanding their motivations, their fears, their plans. Because the moment you know what your enemy is thinking, you've already won half the battle. But there's another layer to this. When you keep your enemies close, you also disarm them. It's very hard for someone to plot against you when you're having coffee with them. It's very hard for someone to spread rumors about you when you've just been seen laughing together. Machiavelli understood that appearances matter more than reality. If people think you and your enemy are allies, they stop trying to drive a wedge between you. And your enemy, isolated from potential co-conspirators, becomes far less dangerous. So here's your takeaway. Don't avoid your enemies. Study them. Engage with them. Not because you like them, but because you need to know what they're planning. And while you're at it, make sure they think they know what you're planning, but they won't, because you're about to learn lesson number 4. Lesson 4, conceal your intentions. Machiavelli wrote, "No enterprise is more likely to succeed than one concealed from the enemy until it is ripe for execution." In other words, the moment people know what you're trying to do, they can stop you. Think about that. How many times have you shared your plans too early? How many times have you told someone what you were going to do, only to have them undermine you, steal your idea, or prepare themselves to block you? Every time you announce your intentions, you give people the opportunity to interfere. Machiavelli understood that silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. The most dangerous people in any room are not the ones talking the loudest. They're the ones listening. They're the ones who know more than they reveal. They're the ones who move in silence and strike when no one is expecting it. Now, I'm not telling you to become a liar or a manipulator. I'm telling you to become strategic. There's a difference between deception and privacy, between lying and not telling everything you know. Most people overshare. They want validation, they want approval, they want someone to tell them they're on the right track. And in doing so, they give away their power. The dangerous person, the dangerously smart person. They keep their cards close, they let people wonder. They let people guess, and while everyone else is busy trying to figure them out, they're already 3 moves ahead. But here's the catch. You can't do this if you can't control your emotions, and that brings us to lesson 5. Lesson 5, control your emotions or they will control you. Machiavelli knew something that modern psychology has only recently confirmed. Emotional self-regulation is the foundation of power. People who can't control their emotions are predictable, and predictable people are exploitable. Think about it. When you get angry, what happens? You say things you regret. You reveal things you shouldn't. You make decisions that feel good in the moment, but cost you later. When you get scared, what happens? You retreat, you play small. You make choices from fear rather than strategy. When you get desperate, what happens? You grasp at anything. You lose your standards. You accept deals and relationships that you would never accept if you were thinking clearly. Machiavelli observed that the most effective leaders are those who can separate feeling from action. They feel anger, but they don't act on it. They feel fear, but they don't show it. They feel desire, but they don't let it cloud their judgment. This is what the ancient Stoics called apatheia, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. And here's the dangerous part. When you master your emotions, you become unreadable. People can't manipulate you because they don't know what you're feeling. They can't push your buttons because your buttons no longer work. You become, in Machiavelli's terms, virtue, someone who shapes their own fortune rather than being shaped by it. So the next time you feel anger rising, pause. The next time you feel fear gripping you, breathe. The next time you feel the urge to react, wait. Because in that pause, in that moment of control, you reclaim your power. Now controlling your emotions is one thing, but controlling how others see you, that's something else entirely. Lesson 6. Appearances are everything. Machiavelli wrote, "The masses always follow appearances and the outcomes of affairs." This is uncomfortable to hear. We want to believe that people see us for who we really are, that our character speaks for itself, that hard work and good intentions will eventually be recognized. But that's not how the world works. People judge you based on what they see, not what they know, not what you intend, what they see. And here's the cold truth. You are responsible for what people see. If you appear weak, people will treat you as weak, regardless of how strong you actually are. If you appear uncertain, people will doubt you, regardless of how sure you actually are. If you appear desperate, people will exploit you, regardless of how capable you actually are. Machiavelli understood that perception is a tool, and like any tool, you can either use it or be used by it. Now, I'm not telling you to be fake. I'm telling you to be intentional, to understand that every interaction is a performance, not in the sense of being dishonest, but in the sense of being aware. A leader who slouches and mumbles doesn't inspire confidence. A professional who apologizes for everything doesn't command respect. A person who constantly seeks approval doesn't project authority. Machiavelli advised that a prince should appear merciful, faithful, humane, and religious, even if, when necessary, he must act otherwise, because how you appear determines how people respond to you. So here's your challenge. Look at how you present yourself, your posture, your tone, your language, your presence. Are you projecting what you want to project? Or are you projecting your insecurities, your doubts, your fears? Because people are watching. They're always watching, and they're making decisions about you based on what they see. Make sure they see what you want them to see. But appearances alone aren't enough. You also need to understand something deeper, something that most people never truly accept. Lesson 7. Understand human nature as it is, not as you wish it were. This is perhaps Machiavelli's greatest contribution. Before Machiavelli, philosophers wrote about how people should behave. They wrote about ideals, about virtue, about how the world ought to be. Machiavelli did something different. He wrote about how people actually behave. And what he saw wasn't pretty. He saw that people are driven by self-interest, that they are fickle, that they will betray you the moment it benefits them, that they remember injuries longer than favors, that they are more motivated by fear than by gratitude, that they will follow strength and abandon weakness. Now this sounds cynical, and maybe it is. But here's the thing. You can't protect yourself from something you refuse to see. If you go through life believing that everyone is fundamentally good and that everything will work out if you just try hard enough, you're not being optimistic. You're being naive. And naivety is not a virtue. It's a vulnerability. Machiavelli wasn't telling you to become cruel. He was telling you to become clear-eyed, to see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. To understand that kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it's enablement. That trust without verification is not trust, it's negligence. The dangerously smart person doesn't assume bad intentions, but they also don't assume good ones. They observe, they test, they verify. They understand that most people will do what benefits them, and they plan accordingly. So here's your lesson. Stop being surprised when people let you down. Stop being shocked when people choose themselves over you. Stop being offended when people act in their own self-interest. That's not betrayal, that's human nature. The question isn't whether people will act selfishly. The question is, are you prepared for it? And that brings us to our final lesson, the one that ties everything together. Lesson 8, shape your own fortune. Machiavelli believed that life is a battle between two forces, fortune and virtue. Fortune is luck, chance, the things that happen to you. Virtue, and this is important, is not virtue as we understand it today. It's excellence, skill, force of will. The ability to shape your own destiny. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river. When it's calm, you can sail on it easily. But when it floods, it destroys everything in its path, unless you've built dams and levees to control it. In other words, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how prepared you are for it. Most people are passive. They wait, they hope, they react. They let life happen to them, and then they wonder why they feel so powerless. The dangerously smart person does the opposite. They anticipate, they prepare, they build. They don't wait for opportunity to knock, they build a door and walk through it. Machiavelli said, "Fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under it is necessary to beat and coerce her." Now, that's an ugly metaphor by modern standards, but the point is clear. Fortune favors the bold. The people who succeed are not the luckiest. They are the ones who refuse to be passive, the ones who take action, the ones who, when life gives them setbacks, adapt and find another way. They understand that waiting for things to get better is not a strategy. It's a delay tactic. So here's your final lesson. Stop waiting. Stop hoping. Stop telling yourself that things will work out if you just hang on long enough. Make them work out. Take control. Build your dams and levees. Prepare for the floods before they come. Because fortune doesn't care about your good intentions. Fortune rewards action. And that's the core of everything we've talked about today. So let's recap. Lesson 1. It is safer to be feared than loved, because fear is reliable, love is fragile. Lesson 2. Never do an enemy a small injury. Either treat them well or destroy them completely. Lesson 3. Keep your enemies close. They are sources of information, not just obstacles. Lesson 4. Conceal your intentions. Silence is strategy, not emptiness. Lesson 5. Control your emotions or they will control you. Lesson 6. Appearances are everything. People judge what they see, not what they know. Lesson 7. Understand human nature as it is, not as you wish it were. Lesson 8. Shape your own fortune. Don't wait for life to happen to you. 8 lessons, 8 principles. And here's the thing. None of these lessons are about being cruel. None of them are about hurting people. They're about protecting yourself. They're about seeing clearly. They're about refusing to be a victim in a world that doesn't care about your good intentions. Machiavelli wasn't a monster. He was a realist. He saw the world as it is, and he wrote about it with brutal honesty. And that's what I'm asking you to do today. Not to become cold, not to become cynical, but to become awake. To stop being surprised when people let you down. To stop being passive when you could be active. To stop being the piece on the board and start being the player. Because the world is not going to get kinder. People are not going to become more trustworthy. Life is not going to become easier. The only thing that can change is you. So here's my challenge to you. Take these 8 lessons. Think about them, apply them, not all at once, but one by one. Start with lesson 1. Are you more concerned with being liked or being respected? Start there, work on it, and then move to the next. Because becoming dangerously smart isn't something that happens overnight. It's a practice, a discipline, a way of seeing the world. And it starts with a single decision. I will no longer be naive. I will no longer be passive. I will no longer be a victim of my own good intentions. That decision is yours to make. Make it. Thank you for listening to Mind Goals. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been taken advantage of. Someone who's been too nice for too long. And remember, the world doesn't reward the innocent, it rewards the prepared. Be prepared.